Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. The end of a tough week is almost here. One more away trip to go, and it's fair to say this will be the toughest test yet. Arsenal travel to the Etihad to face Pep Guardiola's reigning champions on Sunday, hoping to win there for the first time since 2015. Santi Cazorla and Olivier Giroud scored the last time we left there victorious in the league. It's fair to say it's been a while. Hey everybody, hope you're all well, hope you're good. Thanks for joining me bright and early on this Saturday morning. I know this isn't the normal time that we stream. I know I can be a little bit all over the place when it comes to times, but I am off to Queen's Park Rangers versus Millwall today. I'm on radio duty for BBC London Sport, so given that's an early kickoff, I thought I'd better do this nice and early so that I can get it out with plenty of time for you guys ahead of tomorrow's huge game. One of the things that I would say has probably wound me up in the lead up to this game is the way that so many in the media and online are desperate to bill this as a title decider. Like, I've just called it a huge game because I think it's naturally a huge game when the two sides that people expect to battle it out for the Premier League title go head to head. But I stop short of calling this a title decider because we're in September. Calm down. It's really getting on my nerves, the way everybody's seeking to kind of pile all the pressure on Arsenal. I always think, in a fixture like this, where it's two sides that you expect to be neck and neck come the end of the season, the onus to win it is on the home side. And I felt that when we played them at the Emirates Stadium last season, and obviously we beat them, thanks to Gabriel Martinelli's deflected effort. And then we went to the Etihad and were, in my opinion, and certainly it was my view, that a point would be a good result because we'd already taken 3 points off them in the home game. So I think, especially if you win the first one, which is your home game, it puts all the onus on the home side to go and win it. So, look, people will argue, they'll counter that argument and they'll say, well, Manchester City are the side that are the reigning champions. We're the challengers. We're the ones seeking to usurp them. And so there is an expectation or a pressure on us to go and win the game. But I just don't see it like that. And particularly in the month of September, I'm finding it really difficult to get into like title decider mode when there's so many games still to play. I think the fact that we won the North London derby last weekend means we've alleviated some of the pressure that would have been on us had we dropped points there. The literal worst case here is that Manchester City beat us and we fall 5 points behind them. But context is key, and the context around that would be that we've been to the Etihad. They, of course, would still need to come to our place. We've been to Villa Park and we've been to White Hart Lane. The fact that Arsenal would be, if they lost this game, 5 points behind Manchester City would not be disastrous because of that context I've just provided you. What's the toughest trip that they've had this season? Chelsea, on Enzo Maresca's first competitive game. It's perfectly reasonable, as I say, to expect that we'll be slightly behind coming out of this run of matches. Factor in the injuries and all the rest of it, the lack of recovery time from Thursday's trip to Bergamo, etc. And to be, as I say, 5 points behind in the worst case, come the end of September is nothing. And look, let me be clear. I'm not saying that we should go there not wanting to win. Obviously, we should go there with the intention of winning. Obviously, we're going to go there and try and get the best result that we possibly can. And if we take a decision 10 minutes from time, if things are all level, to maybe try and see the game out and get a draw, I'm fine with that. But your intention when you turn up is always to win when you're playing at the elite level. And I just don't buy this nonsense that everybody thinks Arsenal are going to turn up with no intention and no aspiration of winning the game. It isn't the Mikel Arteta way. And where I get even more frustrated is when Arsenal fans jump on that bandwagon, because we should know this man inside out by now. We should understand his values inside out. And he is certainly not someone that goes anywhere without that desire to win. Sometimes in game, you have to take what my good friend Kwaku Afari described yesterday as a business decision. in the middle of a game, and maybe we'll need to do that at some point, depending on the way it goes. But the intention is to go and win. All I'm saying is we don't need to burden ourselves with this incredible pressure to go there and be victorious at this stage in the season. It's way too early to be putting the players under that kind of pressure and in that intense environment. I think it would hinder them rather than help them. If we can halt Manchester City from pulling further away from us by getting a draw, I'll be delighted. Coming out of the run that we've been on and being just 2 points behind them, I would say would be very satisfactory, given we're depleted, haven't really got going yet, and it's a tough old week. Some of you will be screaming back at me and saying, we need to win, stop the loser mentality. Ric Flair, for the WWE fans, famously said, to be the man, you've got to beat the man. And I get that, but sometimes you have to be realistic about where you are. And when I say where we are, I'm not talking about the wider, bigger picture. Arsenal are at the point now where they need to challenge for the Premier League title. So I'm not saying that where we are in the grand scheme of things isn't a place where we should be expecting now to go on and win the league. What I'm saying about context and about looking at where you are is the context of this week. We're without Martin Odegaard. Key player. There's no one in the squad, in my opinion, that replaces him, that's like for like, that does what he does, that brings what he brings to the table. So we have to find different solutions. There are players who are badly out of form. Declan Rice, for me, is out of form right now. Martinelli is out of form right now. Gabriel Jesus is out of form right now. And we're in a place where at the start of this new season, having been forced to deal with these situations, and the injuries and people being absent, Mikel Merino out, etc., we are having to find solutions on the fly. And the reason that we were able to go and win at Spurs was because we were really, really solid. And even though our attacking display was nowhere near what we know we're capable of, we only needed a moment because of that platform that we've built by being so defensively solid. And the same was the case in Atalanta. Now, I know we conceded a penalty. David Raya's heroics, made a big difference in the outcome of that game. But he's a defender too. He's part of the defence too. I'm just saying that when you think about where we are this week and the context of this game, I don't think a draw is a bad result at all. And I would take it. If you offered me a contract now, said, Harry, sign here on the dotted line, you don't play the game, in Arsenal and Manchester City get awarded a point, I'm absolutely signing it. We've got to get through this week in survival mode. That's what we're in at the moment. We're in survival mode. Because as I say, when you're without so many key players, when you've got people who are very, very clearly not at their best, you revert into survival mode and you just need to get through. And that steel, that grit, that defensive determination that Arsenal have shown over the last couple of years is why people are talking about them as being potential title challengers now. It's not just about what we do in terms of going forward and what we have done over the last couple of years in terms of going forward. It's about the bigger picture, the maturity that we've shown. And I remember coming away from the game at the Etihad last season and listening to everyone and anyone moaning and complaining and saying Arsenal didn't even want to win the game. Of course we turned up with the intention of wanting to win the game. Of course we did. But we took a decision at some point in the game, I think, that defence needed to come first. And having already taken 3 points off of them at the Emirates earlier in that season, we felt that getting a draw was the best course of action. We took less risk towards the end of the game, although we did have a couple of counter-attacks towards the end of the game. And in the end, we left with a point and having taken 4 points off of our title rivals, which I think was a good return. We didn't lose the league at the Etihad last season. And people who say we did, honestly, you're the most annoying people in the world, with all due respect. We lost the league because we didn't beat Villa once. We dropped points on both occasions that we played Fulham. We dropped points against West Ham United at home at the Emirates Stadium. We lost that game. Those were the games in which we come unstuck. Plus, our first half of the season was nowhere near as good in terms of points return as what our second half of the season went on to be. So you can go back through the entire campaign, and you can find multiple examples of games that we should have won that we didn't. Should we have won at Manchester City? Like, on what planet do we believe that we have surpassed them? We haven't done that yet. That's what our goal is. It's what our aim is. It's what our ambition is. But this idea that Arsenal have to go and win there, that Arsenal are definitely going to be title winners this season, all of that is disrespectful to a side that have been incredibly dominant for years and years and years. Now, having sat there for the start of this podcast telling you why you should probably be content with a draw, after the break, we're going to discuss how Arsenal could beat Manchester City. We're going to talk team selection. We're going to talk tactics. We're going to talk about Manchester City's weaknesses, because guess what? They do have them. But before we do that, just want to let you guys know about our partners over at NordVPN and the fantastic service that you can access and sign up for via the link in the description. Visit nordvpn.com/ChroniclesAFC and get your mega discount as well as 4 months additional at the end of your plan. Now, you might be asking what NordVPN is. If you've been living under a rock, NordVPN is the premier VPN service on the planet. And I can say this from experience. I wouldn't talk like this about a product or service that I haven't used myself. I use NordVPN on pretty much a daily basis. Why? Well, just some of the benefits include the fact that you get greater protection online when you're surfing the web via NordVPN. It just adds that protective layer. It protects your IP address, which makes browsing, downloading, typing in information that bit safer. It gives me peace of mind, particularly given my entire business is run online. To know that I've got that added layer of protection really, really helps me. But I guess the benefit that I use more frequently, or the one that comes to mind more often, is the fact that I'm able to change my location with the click of a button. Now, it doesn't teleport me to other parts of the world, but it makes the internet believe that I'm in a different part of the world. And what does that mean? It means I have access to different content, to streams, to movies, to TV series, to games of football, most importantly, that I wouldn't have access to normally in the UK. When I'm traveling abroad, I can flick my NordVPN back to the UK. It shows that I'm in England, and I can access Match of the Day and my Sky Go and TNT and all of that stuff, which allows me to make sure that I don't miss a beat on the English football scene. But also for me, I get to watch my Greek football, which I can't log into from the UK without that VPN service. So it's really, really important to me. It's a really, really handy tool, as well as the added protection that it gives you. NordVPN.com/ChroniclesAFC. The link is in the description. Sign up now to get a mega discount and 4 months additional at the end of your plan. Right, let's get into how we could, the key word being could, beat Manchester City at the weekend. I guess the best place to start is with my team selection. So let's have a look at that first. So my team selection is probably going to upset a few people. There are going to be people that don't like what I'm going for, and that's fine. Feel free in the comments section to tear me apart, to pull me apart. I've gone with the same defense. I don't see any need to change that, and I love continuity when you're talking about defensive setup. So Raya in goal, White, Saliba, Gabriel and Timber would be my back four. Now in the midfield, I've gone for something a little bit different. I've gone for a flat three in the midfield. I know we've been playing with what looks like a 4-4-2. We kind of we utilize that system, of course, against Spurs. Sorry, I completely lost my trail of thought there. We utilised that 4-4-2 against Spurs. And although we didn't start that way against Atalanta, we did shapeshift into that setup on a couple of occasions in the game, different periods of the game. I would go with a flat four at the back, obviously, a flat three in midfield, the two wingers, and a centre forward. Now, out of possession, it will look like a flat four at the back with a flat five across the midfield, because I fully expect and want Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli to tuck in and offer that extra layer of protection. It's really, really important to me that these guys do their job in terms of allowing Rice, Partey and Jorginho, whom I've gone with in the midfield, to all stay compacted. Let me just run you through the rest of the 11, because for those of you listening, you won't be able to see this on your screens. So let me go from the start. Raya in goal. White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Timber are my back four. My midfield will go Jorginho, Partey, and Rice as a flat three. Saka on the right, Martinelli on the left, and Kai Havertz will lead the line for me. So that's how I'm looking at it. That's how I want to see us set up. And there's reasons for this, okay? So let me explain some of those reasons. Havertz up front. He needs to be our focal point. He needs to be our centre forward. When we take him out of that position, we are significantly weaker. Kai Havertz has done his best work in an Arsenal shirt in that area of the pitch. And I just think having him up front gives us a multitude of things. It gives us an outlet, a player who we can knock the ball long to. He's a player who can hold the ball up, and he gives us a physical presence. When you take him out of that role, I'm sorry, given Gabriel Jesus' current form, guys, we have nothing in that position. Nothing at all. Now, you may be thinking, why have I gone with what looks like a slightly negative formation? And I'm going to explain how I think we should look to attack Manchester City in a bit. But the reason I've gone with this formation right now, with what looks like a 4-5-1, especially out of possession, is because I'm not convinced that without Martin Odegaard, and having yet to find whatever that combination is that's going to help us ride through this period without him, we don't offer enough of a punch to justify a more offensive and expansive approach. Now, I'm not saying this is something that I want to see us do every week until Martin Odegaard returns. That's not what I'm saying for a minute. The reason I'm saying this is the way to go on Sunday is because I'm paying respect to Manchester City, to what they're capable of, and I'm thinking about and applying the context that I've been talking about around this game. The other questionable pick, I guess, would probably be Martinelli. There's a lot of you that will look at that and say, on his current form, Martinelli shouldn't be in the starting 11. I disagree. We need his pace, we need his ability to stretch the opposition, and we need his defensive work rate. Put Leandro Trossard there, he doesn't protect Jurriën Timber in the same way. Put Leandro Trossard there and try and use him as an outlet, it's nowhere near as effective. Put Leandro Trossard there and he doesn't pin back the fullback in the way that Gabriel Martinelli is capable of. I'm not saying that Gabriel Martinelli is in his best moment and that he's playing his best football. We can all agree that that's not the case. But I think he's almost better suited to these types of counter-attacking games. If you look back at the Spurs game and you look back at the Atalanta game, if you take the finishing out of it for a minute and you just focus on all the other things that Gabriel Martinelli brings us, and I praised him after the Spurs game, and I sort of leapt to his defence in the post-match pod because I felt like everybody was getting onto him, and perhaps some of that was over the top and maybe not justified, because aside from not scoring, obviously, he gave us a lot. He gave us a hell of a lot in that game. As I've said, I'm not touching the defence. I'm not messing around with that. The other one that you might be looking at and thinking, not sure about that, is Jorginho's inclusion. Thomas Partey has shown me at the start of this season that he can no longer be trusted as a lone six, let alone at a place like Manchester City. Now, I don't like the idea of taking Kai Havertz out of the centre-forward role and bringing him into a deeper position. So, for me, the best solution is to play a midfield trio of Rice, Partey, and Jorginho. Let them stay narrow. Let them stay compact. If one gets dragged out of position, there's another two to come across and cover. And with the support of Saka and Martinelli, who are going to have to put in another real shift, we should be far more solid. I think in this game, transitions are going to be really, really important. And Pep Guardiola's talked about how good Arsenal are in those defensive transitional situations. The fact that they're much quicker at getting back, etc., etc. But because of the players that we have missing, I don't feel confident that we can play through Manchester City and play in our plan A type style. I just don't think that that's going to happen. So I think we need to be more direct. I think we need to be targeting certain areas of the pitch, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that right now. But Havertz and Martinelli are really key to my plan, as is Jorginho. Let me explain why. I watched Manchester City's game the other night with Inter, and I thought they were good for the most part and definitely controlled the game for the most part, and sort of having read what people were saying in the immediate aftermath of the game, it was Manchester City are really vulnerable. We can get at them. We can hurt them. And, Inter had lots and lots of counter-attacking opportunities to score. Inter didn't create that many clear-cut chances, in my opinion, but what they did do was expose one particular area in Manchester City's armour and go for it time and time and time again. Now, Manchester City, like all good teams, when they lose the ball and they're having to get into position to deal with a transition, become narrow. And the way they play, where they push both fullbacks inside at times, they end up with kind of what looks like this. Let me just demonstrate it to you guys on here. So sometimes they end up with a situation where, let me just bring this up on the screen. Bear with me. For those of you listening, I am going to explain. They kind of end up in a situation where they're defending with what looks like a 4, and it becomes a 2, like the 2 centre-backs like that, and then you end up with another 2 in front, and they try and create this box. And that's how they seek to kind of filter you out to the left or out to the right to stop you attacking their goals centrally, right? All good defensive teams will shepherd you out to the wide areas because you're less likely to score from there. So these are the areas in which you can get at Manchester City. These 2 areas here. What am I doing with this? Need to draw another box. There we go. Nope, that's not right. Not very good at this, am I? There we go. Right, there you go. So these are the 2 areas that you need to try and hit Manchester City in. When you win the ball, when you win a turnover, you need to get the ball, in my opinion, into these areas as quickly as you possibly can. Not 5 passes later, not 3 passes later, not 2 passes later. When you win the ball back in the midfield, you need to look up and you need to hit those areas. And your 2 wingers need to be ready. They need to be ready that as soon as that transition comes, the turnover of possession happens, they need to be on their bikes and they need to be getting into these areas. And using Partey and Jorginho more so than Declan Rice, because I think they're better ball players than him, but he's obviously got that running power. What you need to do is you need to work the ball out into those areas. Whether that's Jorginho, and that's another reason I would say it's good to have Jorginho in the side here, because he's certainly one of those players that from deep can play those passes. You need to get the ball out into those wide areas, and in the time that it takes for those guys to bring the ball down, hopefully win their duels on the right and left hand side, your runners need to get going. Now, your runners can't be Partey and Jorginho because they are not capable of covering the ground, in my opinion. And so the 2 runners in this team that I've picked are going to be Kai Havertz, who would have dropped deep to bring the defence forward in the first place, creating those corridors in the wide areas for the 2 wingers to receive the ball. He will then need to turn back around and get on his bike and make his way towards the box. And I want to see Declan Rice use his running power to get into those positions. Partey and Jorginho then become that 2 in midfield like we saw at Tottenham, and you're protected yourselves against Manchester City winning the ball back and coming at you as well. So there's going to be a lot of work required from Saka, Martinelli, Rice, Havertz. They're all capable of doing it. You've got to take the workload in terms of covering ground away from the likes of Thomas Partey and Jorginho, because they just can't handle it anymore. They're just not very good at it anymore. They don't have that running power that you need to play this way. Now, I'm not saying that you're definitely going to batter Manchester City if you play this way, because they're a really, really good team. But as I say, like most sides, when they lose the ball, they seek to protect the middle of the pitch. And so if you can make your first, or in some cases second pass, one that goes out to those wide areas, and you can get Saka and Martinelli up there, you create the types of situations that Inter found themselves in many, many, many times during that game. They didn't have the quality to capitalise on those situations. They didn't have the ability to put Manchester City to the sword on the night. They ought to have done better with some of those opportunities, but they didn't. We could potentially take one of these opportunities, and that's the way that I could see Arsenal maybe, just maybe, winning this game. Let me know what you think in the live chat. It's that box that Manchester City like to defend with. The 4 players. Watch back the highlights on YouTube of the Inter game, and you will see 3 examples, because I went through them this morning. 3 examples of where Inter win the ball back, work it into those wide areas early, get players forward, and then runners come through the midfield, and that's where their threat was. As I say, they didn't take advantage of it, but that's clearly an area in which you can hurt Manchester City. Other than that, you're going to have to defend really well. You're going to have to take your chances when they come your way. I accept all of that stuff, and you're going to need a bit of luck on the day. But they're not unpenetrable, is the point I'm trying to make here. Are they good? Of course they're good. Have they started the season brilliantly? Of course they have. Do they look in finer fettle than we do? Yes, of course they do. But we certainly have what it takes to hurt them. We do. But first and foremost, it's got to be about defensive solidity. This is a way of transitioning on them while not giving up too much in terms of spaces, and asking players that just don't have the running power to bust a gut to get up and down. So this is the way I would approach the game if I were Mikel Arteta. Let me just tell you my lineup one more time before I go. Raya in goal, obviously. White, Saliba, Gabriel and Timber would be my back 4. My midfield would be a flat 3 of Partey, Rice and Jorginho. I'm going Martinelli on the left. I'm going Saka on the right. And I'm going Kai Havertz back at centre forward. Then you've got Jesus on the bench. You've got Sterling on the bench. You've got Trossard on the bench if you need to freshen things up and change it up. And all of a sudden, we look a bit more healthier in that department as well. But yeah, that's what I'd go with. In terms of my prediction, guys, you're not going to like this because it sounds like I'm being pessimistic. But I pride myself on accuracy, as you guys would have found out on Thursday night when I predicted that 0-0 draw with Atalanta. I'm going to go for a Manchester City 1-0 win. I think if we defend like we did against Tottenham, we won't concede many, but they pack much more of a punch than Tottenham Hotspur do. Erling Haaland in particular is the guy that you need to watch out for. And for that reason, I find it difficult to believe that we're going to keep another clean sheet. I don't know that we're going to score because I think our opportunities are going to be limited. But I do think that what I've described to you is the way that you need to attack them into the wide areas early. The key word being early. Create those 1v1 situations. Pull the centre-backs apart. Make them have to go out and confront Saka and Martinelli. And if you can carry the ball and carry it closer to the box, and you can get the runners like Havertz, like Rice, into and in and around the penalty area, then you've got a chance. And that's the way I see this game. And that's the way I would approach it if I were Arsenal boss this weekend. Big thank you to everybody for tuning in today. Sorry for the fact that we're streaming so early in the morning. It's not because I plan on making a habit of this or I want to step on anyone's toes or anything else. I know Tom Canton does his show at 8 a.m. I started at 8:30 a.m. This morning. That's not the reason. It's purely because I've got to get down to Queen's Park Rangers for a 12:30 p.m. kickoff. So I need to leave the house probably by about 9:30 at the absolute latest. So that's why I'm doing it nice and early. Thank you for tuning in. If you're watching this back on replay, thank you. Sorry I didn't have time to jump over into the comments section today in the way that I normally do. I promise on the review show we'll do a lot more of that. Thank you for your continued support as always, and I will see you after the Manchester City game now. Hopefully we've got a positive result to talk about. I'll take a draw. My prediction is 1-0 to Man City because I'm predicting with my head rather than my heart. But offer me a draw now and I'll take it every day of the week. I'll see you all on the next one. Have a great Saturday. Goodbye.